Hi, I'm Nigel Barker, and I am backstage at New York Fashion Week at the Pamela Rowland Show. Now, New York Fashion Week is a major day on the New York fashion calendar, and of course, this is the day where photographers are all over the place. They're shooting behind the scenes, they're shooting the runway themselves. You've got people like me who work for Pamela shooting her campaigns, sitting front row, getting inspired by what's going to be in front of our lenses in the months to come as we shoot those editorials and those campaigns for them. And there's just a lot going on. It's not as easy as it looks. It is quite chaotic back here. So much happens, so much money is spent in a very short period of time. A fashion show only lasts around 20 minutes, but the prep goes on for months in advance. And after the show is done, of course, all these gowns are for sale and people are buying, and it is just a big deal. So Hi, I'm Nigel Barker, and I am backstage at New York Fashion Week at the Pamela Roland Show. Now, New York Fashion Week is a major day on the New York fashion calendar, and of course, this is the day where photographers are all over the place. They're shooting behind the scenes, they're shooting the runway themselves. You've got people like me who work for Pamela, shooting her campaigns, sitting front row, getting inspired by what's going to be in front of our lenses in the months to come as we shoot those editorials and those campaigns for them. And there's just a lot going on. It's not as easy as it looks. It is quite chaotic back here. So much happens, so much money is spent in a very short period of time. A fashion show only lasts around 20 minutes, but the prep goes on for months in advance. And after the show is done, of course, all these gowns are for sale and people are buying, and it is just a big deal. So the photos really are super important. Not just the behind the scenes, which of course tell the story of the designer, to the actual photographers who are down the end, and you'll see down here there's a big pit of photographers, and they are all already gathering for this show. They're coming from other shows. These guys have been doing it, some of them for 30, 40 years, if you can believe it, and there are as well newbies, new guys, this might be their first fashion week, who are in for a surprise as they have to rush from place to place all over New York City, big heavy camera gear in hand, trying to figure out how to get that best shot with the designer's name in the background, get the outfit head to toe with perfect detail, because these outfits are sold because of these pictures. So every one of these shots is a sale for the designer. Pamela takes her photography very seriously. It's how she communicates her brand message to the world. So there's a lot that goes into it. So the clock is ticking, and as they say, fashion waits for no one. So this is front of stage at Pamela Roland Show. People haven't yet arrived. The doors are still closed. They've just gone through the rehearsal. And as you can see back there, the photographers in the pit are beginning to gather. They're coming from other shows. They're finding their spot. They're very territorial about who sits where, and you have to earn your spot. As you've been here longer and longer, you get to sit more and more central in that path, and the new photographers have to be on the edge, which means it's even harder for them to get that perfect shot down the runway. And when you see the runway, one of the things that you don't realize, it's actually quite complicated, is that you really want to cut people's feet out. And it seems like an obvious thing, but people are sitting on either side with their legs crossed and their toes dip into the picture, which is the reason why you'll see a lot of the photographers in the pit use very long lenses. Unlike my wide angle, which I need because I'm sitting right here on the edge, they're shooting all the way down. So with that long lens, they can cut out and narrow that scope and cut out all the feet and just get the model. During the rehearsal, the models actually wear their own clothes. They're just practicing, getting a feeling for what it's like walking this particular runway. Every designer's runway is slightly different. They can position the chairs as they would like, and every different location has a different lay of the land, different lighting, a different feel. The floors, if you look at the floors, there's actually a crack in the floor right here too. So the model wants to know where that is so that they can step over that. Nothing worse than a 6-inch heel going into that and that be your shot. And of course, the photographers in the pit are ready to catch you if you fall. There are famous pictures of people like Naomi Campbell who have fallen at fashion shows. It happens, guys. It's not easy if you're wearing very high heels. Also, as the model turns the edge and comes onto the runway, they often pause for just a split second before moving. You actually get the model almost not walking nearly as fast as they were before, and the sign, Pamela Roland, is right above their head. So you get a great shot with the name of the designer right above them, all in focus. So there's a lot of things to sort of think about that you often take for granted. Now, me, on the other hand, I'll be sitting somewhere here in this front row. I get to see the models looking fantastic as they walk past me. But the reason why I have that wide angle lens is because now I've got them full length, even when they're right in front of me. So that's one of the reasons why specifically I go for this type of shot. But when you're here, it's an honor to be so close, but not easy to get the picture. So I always use the 16 to 35 millimeter lens. The wide angle lets me get head to toe, and if I want the detail, of course, I can always crop in. I shoot RAW, never shoot JPEG, so I got as much information as possible. And in this environment, although it's wonderful to have these big windows and it does create a lovely airy feeling, it also causes for a backlight situation, which can be complicated. So let me show you my settings back here. I actually set my ISO to around 1600, to between 800 and 1600. Why so high? Specifically because the light changes dramatically, the clothes coloring changes dramatically, and I can go up and down on my shutter speed, and that's for me the easiest thing to do. Now I never go less than 125 when shooting a model moving, and I really prefer to shoot at about 500. Now the lights in here will go up, and they will become much brighter when these headlights go on, and all of a sudden the actual contrast will change. And one of the hardest things about shooting a fashion show is that right at the beginning of the show, it's very dark, super dark. Then it goes pitch black, and then all of a sudden the lights go up, and it goes boom, you've got color, and the model's on the runway. So you really want to set your camera in advance so that you are ready for that boom moment. Another trick here, let me take you to the back. AI servo stands for Artificial Intelligence Servo. Now, why that is important is that when you have it on that setting, if you press the autofocus button on the back and you focus on your model as they're walking towards you, it then tracks the model as they walk towards you and keeps them in focus. It's not that easy to use. I recommend practicing with it, but once you master it, it really solves so many problems because it's very hard to keep on focusing on the model as they're walking towards you. You know, it's a bit of a trick, but there are all these tricks are helpful when you're trying to capture a fashion show at Fashion Week. Well, I'm backstage with my good friend and designer, Pamela Rowland. Pamela, lovely to see you.
Great to see you as always.
Such an exciting moment for you. I know this is one of the biggest days of the year for you. Photography plays a large part in the fashion industry, from the magazines to the commercials to your Instagram feeds. For you, what do you look for in photography to showcase Pamela Rowland? What's the style of photography that's important to you?
I look for something interesting in the picture, you know, not just somebody that knows how to work with a model, because often models need direction.
But it's also a collaboration, isn't it? I mean, you and
Definitely.
I, over the years, have worked together on shoots, and we collaborate, we talk about what we're looking for. But backstage right here too, there are photographers taking photographs of your models, having their makeup done. You have videographers and still photographers on the runway shooting your actual shows as they come down, and you use those pictures as well. For what?
Oh yes, for our now with social media.
Absolutely.
I mean, in the past, nobody saw those images for a while until we got our lookbooks out. But I mean, now they're out there right away. So we have to be with our people that are in our audience. We got to be up with them to try to get ours out really quick also.
No, for sure. And also those show photographs are used to sell the garments themselves, aren't they?
Absolutely, more than ever.
And today is not just a day for fun, but it is a big sales day, isn't it? This is basically a market day.
And you know, we're on Instagram Live at 2, so people are watching the show.
So you can follow the show live, which is an amazing thing. That's brand new technology there, right firsthand. Look, I won't take any more of your time. I know you've got a busy time ahead of you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
So that was an amazing show, a lot of action, a lot of buzz. The clothes looked fantastic. And of course, there are a ton of photographers, not just people at the end shooting this, but of course, everyone in every seat, either shooting with a camera or shooting with a camera on their phone. This is a photographic moment, and it is spread across the world instantaneously. I hope that you learned something from this. I hope you got inspired, and hopefully you may want to take a career in fashion photography, because as you can see, a lot of areas where photographers are needed, not just shooting the campaigns or shooting editorials for magazines, but shooting the runway shows, shooting behind the scenes, and bringing this whole massive multi-billion-dollar industry to life. Thanks so much, and I hope to see you on Top Photographer Challenge very soon.
If you manage a team, you have to try Monday.com. Monday.com is a platform to track everything your team is working on. We use it for all our projects.
Good morning and welcome to an extremely wet North Yorkshire. It's absolutely chucking it down, but I love it. There's so many advantages to shooting in the rain, particularly in woodland. It does fantastic things for atmosphere, for colour, for reflecting light. So yeah, I'm really quite enjoying this, to be honest, despite the fact that I'm getting very, very wet. So I've come to a spot which I discovered about 2.5 years ago here in North Yorkshire, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to get a lovely foggy or misty morning down here, and I've just missed it. You know, it's probably happened, but I've missed it. So I don't really want to wait any longer. I think I've done 2 videos here already, but I've never actually taken any photographs in those videos. So I thought it'd be nice just to come down and take some images regardless. It might not be perfect, it might not be the final image that I have visualized that I'm really aiming towards, but I think we can still get some quite pleasing images in this rain. So like I said, the rain, although very difficult to work in, and I'm slipping everywhere as well, does really nice things for colour. It works really well on these silver birch leaves and on the bracken, because we're in early autumn time now and everything's starting to turn. So I really want those kind of nice natural, not really vibrant, but just a nice natural early autumn colours to come through. So I've come to a scene here which I have walked past before, and it's quite a challenging scene, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm drawn to it, because I love compositions like this where you've really got to work hard to try and get the most out of it. And I've come to accept that there's some imperfections in this. There's some bits which aren't ideal, but I'll go into the reasons why I accept them. So to give you a feel for what I'm looking at, sorry, I can't stand still. We've got some mossy branches just creeping in from the left hand side, and then it kind of kinks up and follows the flow of this other main mossy tree trunk here. And then we've got another branch lower down that flows into the right hand side of the scene. Then we've got 2 leaning trees over on the right hand side of the frame, which kind of lead off the frame, but then they've got these lovely kind of secondary trees, if you like, these nice vertical branches which are coming up from the silver birch tree. So everything kind of flows over to the right hand side, and then those lovely vertical branches, they just start to frame the right hand side of the scene, and then they just kind of curve round a little bit at the top, just to kind of create that natural vignette again. And then this branch over on the left hand side, this tree trunk here, where that curves up and helps to frame the top of the scene. And then straight through the middle we've got an oak tree in the distance, just to kind of give that extra bit of depth, that visual element in the center of the frame. But also back there's no canopy, so that's helping to kind of bring the light down. So essentially we've got these lovely kind of complex structure of branches taking us around the scene, but ultimately the light and where we want to be held in the image is in the center of the frame. So it's kind of similar concept to what I've talked about before, but there are a few more things to consider here. So the slightly annoying thing is the branch that leans off in the bottom right hand corner. It's just this little triangle in the bottom right in the frame, and it's not ideal. It creates a little bit of tension in the scene, which is absolutely fine. Possibly a slight bit of unbalance, which I've tried to counteract by making sure there's plenty of weight in the left hand side of the scene. But importantly, there's a nice branch which just comes up and curves into the scene. So that alone is enough for me to accept that tree trunk down there. I think it works. Like I said, I'm quite happy with a bit of tension. I think ideally it'd be good to just have that misty morning. And I think even just 3 days from now would make all the difference, because these silver birch leaves are turning into yellow really quite quickly, and I think that little bit of extra yellow will help to create that separation between these foreground branches and the background, and it'll create that lovely autumn frame of yellow all the way around the scene. It will look absolutely fantastic. But I'm going to take this now because I might not be able to come down again, the conditions might not be any good. And actually just before I started talking, it was chucking it down, and just this little hint of mist just briefly passed through, just probably generated because of the rain was so heavy. So it was just enough to soften that oak tree in the background, create that depth, create that atmosphere, and really kind of capture the feel of this morning. So technically I'm going to shoot a slightly smaller aperture than usual. I'm going to go for f11. That's going to get all these foreground branches in focus. It's going to get softer further back because I've zoomed into about not far off 50mm. So the tree in the background will be softer, doesn't matter because of the rain, it's going to be soft anyway. So yeah, that's worked quite well. I think it was our friend Mr. Thomas Heaton said, I like to photograph the things that everybody else walks past, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but no, he was you know, being kind, because I think essentially what he was saying was there's these lovely intimate scenes which are very easy to miss, such as little scenes of character which are less obvious, and these little snippets which together build up a really nice kind of picture of the wider landscape that we all enjoy. And I really enjoy these small scenes. I enjoy the challenge, and I think it is important to spend that little bit of time working with these challenging scenes, flexing our creative muscles. And I think even the least obvious scene can look amazing under the right conditions and create a very compelling image. And if you want to practice composition, then woodland is the best place to do it as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I love the challenge of it. Right, the rain's just lightened off a bit now. I can see the cloud has lifted, it's starting to lighten a little bit, perhaps losing a bit of that atmosphere, but quite happy with that. I'll move on and see if I can capture something else. And yeah, Meg's looking like a little bit of a drowned rat at the minute. So unfortunately the rain has stopped and it looks like the sun's trying to come out, which is a bit of a shame. It's a bit of a strange breed as woodland photographers where we want the rain and not the sun, because it will affect the atmosphere a bit, but everything's still wet, the colours still look good, so I'll continue to take shots. Now what I've got here is a composition which I spotted a few days ago. I was out with a client, we were walking past, this just caught my eye, I took a quick shot with my mobile phone. And yeah, I just wanted to give it a go today because I thought it was quite nice. I just explained to the client what I was doing, but it's really about the kind of shapes and the relationships between these two trees here. So what we've got is this really nice stumpy oak tree. It's just arching over the riverbank. Coming back in the opposite direction is these really nice sort of squirmy branches which lead into the crown of this oak tree. Really nice crown of glossy oak leaves. And in the background we've got another oak tree which is looking a little bit sorry for itself, but it's showing off its structure really nicely, and that arches over the top of this one. So it's quite a nice, some really nice kind of complementary shapes, nice interaction between the two. There's not quite as much autumn colour as I would like, because there's a patch of kind of rusty, vibrant bracken down in the bottom left-hand corner here, so it'd be nice to kind of get some of that complementary colour throughout the rest of the scene. There's some yellow and orange in the oak leaves up there. Now, similar to the other shot, where the bottom right-hand corner was bothering me a bit, I've got the same situation here, but now instead what I've got is just a little patch of the river that's flowing through. So I've been looking at it thinking, you know, am I bothered? Is it distracting to kind of have that little patch of river down there? And I've just decided to go with it, and I don't mind it at all, to be honest. I think that just a little hint of the river, just that little suggestion, just gives an idea of what the kind of characteristics of this woodland are like. So yeah, I don't mind it, and there's a bit of a sheen on the water, so I think it'd be quite tempting to put a polarizer on, but I cannot remember the last time I used a polarizer in woodland, to be honest. It's not that kind of look that you get from it and actually cutting through the reflections. I'm not that keen on, because when you've got the sheen on wet glossy leaves, I love that because it just gives this really nice natural contrast, as long as it's not too bright. But when it's just soft light, glossy leaves. It's really, really nice. And the last thing I want to do is cut through that and then just flatten out the scene and flatten out the greens. So with the sheen down there, it just gives this kind of lovely little shimmer effect. And if I cut through that with a polarizer, then I'd lose the contrast between that and the tree trunk. So what we'd end up with is this tree trunk that just kind of gets lost a little bit, and I think in the dark water. So yeah, not going to use a polarizer. I've framed up a 4x5 crop. I've done that using the grid pattern on the back of here. I don't want to go too high, I don't want to accentuate any height because these are quite short trees, so I want to keep it quite condensed. Yeah, some nice ferns and things down here. Oh, that's Meg. She's just paddling away in the river down there. Maybe there'll be a blurred Meg just running around in the corner of my shot. But yeah, quite happy with it. Quite happy with it. It's just quite interesting dynamics again. So we'll see how that turns out. The sun's well and truly out now, so we're going to get some harsh light, but there's plenty of cloud around. So fingers crossed, I'll get one more shot in. So it looks like the sun is out and here to stay, unfortunately, so I think I'm going to call it a day, probably head home, go for a walk with Adele and Meg and enjoy the sunshine that way. But I hope you've seen the benefits of coming out in this more inclement weather. It is very challenging trying to keep everything dry and the lens dry, but if it wasn't for that really heavy rain earlier on, then I never would have got that sort of sense of atmosphere and separation in that first shot, so very much worthwhile. And all the wet foliage, it's just great. It just does fantastic things for the colour in the silver birch leaves, the orange bracken and the sheen on the oak leaves. So yeah, really lovely. And this is very much early autumn, so hopefully lots more productive days to come as the colour progresses. But thank you very much for watching this episode, and as always, I hope to see you for the next one.
Hey, if you like to photograph flowers either in your garden or wildflowers out in the field, I'm going to show you how to improve your flower photography using off-camera flash, and we're going to get started right now. Hi, I'm Charlie Borland, and probably like you, I like to shoot wildflowers and occasionally garden flowers, both as part of larger landscapes and also flowers isolated by themselves. While it's not difficult to do, like all outdoor and nature photography, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. And that means we don't always get the light we want. So it does not matter how easy the photo may be to take, if the light sucks, the photo's gonna suck. So I solved that problem by using a wireless off-camera flash. It can, in many cases, dramatically improve your photography, like you can see in this example. So if you're wondering how to do this, I'm going to show you right now. I'll start with the gear that I always have with me in the field, and then I'm going to follow with the gear I take when I know I'm shooting wildflowers, specifically using speed lights. I always have in my camera bag a Canon 580 EX2. I also carry radio triggers, and I use those instead of the infrared technology that's built into the flash, simply due to reliability. Now, you might already be aware of this, but direct sunlight can sometimes come down, hit the camera or the flash, and interrupt that infrared triggering signal that goes between the flash and the camera, and that affects its reliability, especially when there's some distance between the flash and the camera. That does not happen with radio signal triggers, so I carry this little device here, which costs between $30 and $40, and it works amazingly well. These are the NPT-04, and if you want to check them out, the link's right down below in the description. I also have with me this mini light box made by Photodiox, which softens the light on a single flower very nicely. Now, as I just mentioned, for more expanded photo sessions where I need more than one flash and I'm not going much distance from my car, I will carry several light stands for multi-flash setups, because in these situations, I can't hold more than one flash in my hand at a time and fire the camera. Or if I'm photographing a subject that requires multiple flashes and light stands, I'll carry all of it. Speaking of light stands, mini light stands can be a good choice for flowers that are closer to the ground, but you can also use something like a gorilla pod, which you can attach to all kinds of different things, or in some cases, I use this little mini tripod, because then I can get my flash at various heights off the ground depending on how high the flower is. Finally, the last valuable item for lighting is a large, small light box, and this is perfect for groups of flower bigger than a single flower. And it spreads light further left and right and up and down, covering a bigger area. Here again, these items are listed in the description below in case you want to check them out. Okay, let's light a flower, and I'll demonstrate by using flowers I, unfortunately, had to go buy. I was traveling a good chunk of the summer, and wildflower season's over. So I bought these flowers today. Okay, first, my strategy for lighting flowers is I want it to look real and not flashed. And you can see how bad these flashed photos look. Contrast that's really ugly. So instead, I strive for a look like the sun is peeking through the clouds, creating beautiful, soft contrast light. As you know, raw sun is harsh, and it's terrible light for photographing delicate flowers, so ideally, shooting on a cloudy day is preferable. The reason I feel this way is the light is much more appealing when adding light to a low contrast scene versus adding light to a high contrast scene. So for this demonstration, I created this setup around my house so we could be in the shade, and that comes close to mimicking an overcast sky. Now, the gravel in my driveway is going to be my background, and that, of course, is not preferable. Usually when you're shooting flowers in the field, you get a nicer background, a more natural background. But since this is all about demonstrating how to light flowers, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But when you look at it, you're going to see gravel in the background. You might think that's ugly, but hey, that's what I got for this particular demonstration. Now, I will say one more thing about backgrounds is you got to remember to watch your backgrounds for distracting elements, and that is tough when you find a flower that you cannot move out in the field and you got a big hot spot in the background or something like that. So you're going to have to figure out ways to deal with that. One of them is to use a fairly wide aperture to throw everything in the background out of focus. And in the case of this example, I started with f5.6 to really throw that background out. Now, one more technical point is how important it is to remember when you add supplemental lighting, you are now photographing with two light sources, the ambient light and then the flashlight. And controlling either light source will be with the shutter speed for the ambient light or the power level or aperture for the flash. Now, the lens I normally use for single flowers or macro is my 100mm macro lens for the small flowers and things like that. But in the case of this, with this dahlia that's much bigger, I'm going to be using my 28-70 because these flowers are so big. The camera and the aperture is going to be f5.6 to f8. I'm not real sure at this point. Now, my ISO is going to be set to 100 as always, and I never go higher unless I'm not on a tripod or I'm working in very weak light and there's subject movement, like the wind blurring flowers, which is it's windy today, or I'm capturing the night sky. In the case of wildflowers, even a hint of air movement can blur a wildflower, so I will try to set my ISO to whatever I need to keep me around 1/80th, 1/100th, maybe 1/60th of a second to try to make sure the flower's frozen if there's just a little hint of movement. And that's all going to depend based on my chosen aperture if I need to go to a higher ISO to get to